The questions and reason why I don't have Ohio State number one like a lot of people do. I think our buddy Brett McMurphy's got Oregon number one, so he didn't go with Ohio State either. I still have a little bit lower rating on this defense because of all the NFL talent that was lost, and until we see these five-stars step in and play at somewhere close to that level, I can't rate Ohio State up there with Notre Dame.
This is VSiN's College Football Betting Podcast.
Welcome in. Another edition of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. I'm your host, Tim Murray, and boy, does it feel good. Feels like we're back where we should be. It's a Thursday, and we're talking with Matt Youmans as we get ready for the college football season, less than 2 weeks away from our extravaganza. Matt, back to the islands. You and I will be doing a couple of special shows out there in Honolulu Wednesday, VSiN Primetime, and we'll be doing our Week 0 college football betting podcast preview live from Honolulu. I know it was hard, though, to convince you to go back to Hawaii. It's a place you despise, you never want to go back to, even though you're wearing a Hawaii shirt and it looks like you are currently sitting in Hawaii with that backdrop.
Yeah, wait until you see the backdrop when we get back out there in about a week and a half or 2 weeks. Yeah, it's a tough road trip, but we'll take it. We'll make the best of it. Tim, great job on the college football betting podcast here at VSiN during the off season. Great to be back with you and our producer, a Michigan man, Wyatt Tomczyk. So ready for another ride here in the middle of August. And I think I always get asked, what do you love the most? Which sport do you love the most? I said, well, during college football season, it's college football. During college hoops season, it's college hoops. But it's definitely one of those two. It's college football or college hoops. And it's great to have college football back.
Yeah, and our VSiN college football betting guide is out. We've talked to a handful of the folks that wrote in that beautiful publication: Adam Burke, Wes Reynolds, JVT, and now Matt Youmans, who has his top 50, which was a collaboration with Paul Stone, and also his breakdown of the Pac-12. So we'll hit the Pac-12 towards the end, Matt, but let's start with your top 10 power-rated teams, and we'll start from the bottom up. You've got Ole Miss at 10 and BYU at 9. And I want to stop there because BYU, I would say most people probably have in the, mid-teens, 15 to 17, somewhere in that ballpark. But you are bullish on Kalani Sitake's team. You have them higher rated in your power ratings than Texas Tech. So what jumped out to you about BYU, and why did you have them in your top 10 of your power ratings?
Yeah, actually in the VSiN top 50, BYU came in and number 13, but I had BYU in the top 10. Paul Stone did not. Second choice on the odds board in the Big 12. And what I like about BYU is this is a veteran team. This is one of the most experienced teams in the country. And plenty of talent on defense and a quarterback. And sophomore Bear Bachmeier, who I like, 3,033 passing yards and 15 touchdowns last season, 527 rushing yards and 11 TDs. You got a star running back in L.J. Martin. But, Tim, I believe that in this era of college football, you have to put extra emphasis on teams that bring a lot of players back. And BYU is an older team, like you said, a veteran team, and they're bringing almost the entire team back. When a lot of, Notre Dame's also a veteran team, bringing a lot of guys back. I think you need to put an emphasis on that and kind of tilt your power ratings that way, because a lot of these teams are trying to incorporate a bunch of transfer portal guys, and Notre Dame and BYU really don't have to do that. And that's why I've got BYU in my top 10, and I think the schedule's obviously difficult, but I think BYU deserves a top 10 ranking.
Yeah, the questions I have about BYU, a lot of the points you make are more than valid. The defense, I think, should be nasty, even though they lost Jay Hill to Michigan. He goes with Kyle Whittingham to be his defensive coordinator, but a lot of pieces back. 0 departures in the portal, as you alluded to. And when you look at Bill Conley's returning production numbers, number 6 in the country in returning defensive production. They also brought in someone that you and I absolutely loved watching, which was Cade Ululave, the stud linebacker from Cal, had 100 tackles. My question, Matt, to you would be this. Do you have concerns about the pass catchers? We know LJ Martin's back, 1,300 rushing yards a year ago, offensive player of the year in the Big 12. But Parker Kingston's gone after he was expelled. Chase Roberts is gone, and Carson Ryan is gone as well. Combined 14 touchdowns, pretty much their entire passing game. So what kind of pieces did you see that they had to add and help out Bear Bachmeier?
Well, I kind of look at it this way, and I do a couple of those receivers being gone does bother me a little bit, and I think that's probably the biggest question mark you have with this team. But at the same time, I don't think BYU is going to rely a lot on their receivers to carry this offense. Again, Bachmeier only had 15 touchdown passes last season. But I've always felt kind of like running backs and receivers are replaceable. We'll talk about that a little bit more with Notre Dame when we get into the Fighting Irish. But I have faith in the BYU staff here to find some capable receivers Bear Bachmeier is going to make a connection with, and that situation is going to work itself out.
Final thought on BYU from a scheduling standpoint. You mentioned Notre Dame, BYU. That game is going to be just a massive one in Provo. Talking to some folks, I've mentioned it on the podcast, it's the biggest game maybe ever in that stadium's history, probably since they won the title back in the early 90s, Matt. And how about this scheduling spot? Following the Notre Dame game, they have to go to Orlando to play UCF. And UCF will be coming off a bye. So I'm gonna close my eyes and look ahead to the Thursday, October 22nd podcast. And I think you and I both will be on UCF plus the points. Unfortunately, I'm sure the market will agree with that as well. So BYU sitting there at number 9 in Matt's power ratings. Number 8 is LSU. You mentioned Paul Stone. You and him collaborated on this top 50. We had Paul way back early in the offseason on this podcast, and he's bullish on the Bayou Bengals as he bet them to make the college football playoff at plus 160. He bet them in the game of the year market against Alabama. You have him at number 8, which is pretty high considering the other SEC teams that you have them ahead of. You have them ahead of Texas A&M. You have them ahead of an Ole Miss and Alabama. So why did you end up having LSU as your third highest rated SEC team?
Well, if Sam Leavitt works out a quarterback, and he probably should, to transfer from Arizona State, I think he's going to have a ridiculous amount of wide receiver talent to work with. Eugene Wilson, the transfer from Florida, Jackson Harris, who we know well, transfer from Hawaii, Winston Watkins, transfer from Ole Miss. And then if you look at the offensive line, which was not great last season for LSU, Jordan Seaton, stud left tackle from Colorado, transfers in. On defense, another bit of an issue last year for LSU. I don't think it's going to be a great defense, but it should be pretty good. Whit Weeks, senior linebacker, is going to be the leader. Then you got Prince Will Yu, the transfer in from Ole Miss. Look, I don't love Lane Kiffin. He's childish and he's immature a lot of times, and he's one of those look at me guys. Always got to have the attention on him. He's a soap opera actor, but he's a really good offensive coach. And with Sam Leavitt and those receivers, I think this offense got a chance to be really explosive, assuming Sam Leavitt's health holds up. So I think LSU is going to be right there.
You know, Matt, looking at your top 7, I think it's the same top 7 most people have. It was the same top 7 of the coaches poll. It's the same top 7 of the odds board. And I'll go from 1 down through 7. Notre Dame, Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Indiana, Miami. Before we dive into each one of those teams, I'm curious your difference between number 1 to number 7, and do you think this is a really compacted top 7, or is there a line of demarcation in your top 7?
Yeah, we've talked about that before on VSiN Primetime, and what I'll say is, and it's true, between the difference between teams 1 and 4 is 2 points.
Wow.
From Notre Dame at 1 to Georgia, that's Paul Stone. That's our collective top 4. I've got Ohio State 4th personally, but in our VSiN top 50, we got Ohio State 3, Georgia 4, Oregon 2. I've got only 2 points of difference between number 1 and number 4. Very tight. It's a razor-thin separation. A bit of a drop-off to Texas, but really from 1 through 7, I think it's a total, 3.5 points of separation from number 1 to number 7, and that's it. And that's extremely tight. There is a bit of a drop-off after number 7, but Texas at 5, Indiana 6, Miami 7, 3.5 points of difference. And, we'll talk about Curt Cignetti and the Hoosiers in a minute, but I wonder if, based on some recent developments, if Indiana might even be a little bit underrated at this point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's get into that. So you've got Indiana at 6. Once again, his top 7, Notre Dame, Oregon, Georgia, Ohio State, Texas, Indiana, Miami. And as Matt just mentioned, 3.5 points separate those top 7. So you could really make a case for a lot of different teams to win the title. But, for me, I think it's those top 7. Anyone outside of that would be a stunner. But, yeah, you've got some potential news brewing. Stephen Daly, defensive lineman, with this new ruling as of now, looks to be eligible for the upcoming season. They're going to have more depth to that defensive line. They did lose a lot. That's certainly worth noting. Fernando Mendoza is going to be playing a preseason game as the number 1 overall pick in Las Vegas on Thursday night. You also lose your top 2 leading rushers, your top 2 leading receivers. You don't lose much on the offensive line, which is certainly a positive. And then defensively, D'Angelo Pons was an absolute lockdown corner. Aiden Fisher's a guy that was the heart and soul of that defense. A lot of the JMU guys are gone. I believe 1 holdover from those original JMU transfers. That being said, I think I made this joke the other day. If Curt Cignetti went out there and walked on water, I'd be like, yeah, I could see it, because that's truly what he has done since he's gotten to Indiana. He has performed a miracle and multiple miracles. So what kind of drop-off do you anticipate from Indiana this year? What's your outlook on the Hoosiers?
So there might be a bit of a drop-off because they did lose some talent to the NFL draft, no question. They got to replace Fernando Mendoza with a quarterback. I have a big question mark behind Josh Hoover, transfer from TCU. And 42 turnovers and 31 starts for the Fort Worth Frogs. And, Curt Cignetti said his best friends are going to be a running game and a defense now, which maybe he didn't have enough of in Fort Worth. And if Curt Cignetti sees something in Josh Hoover, I'm not going to doubt him. Cignetti went after Hoover for a reason, but I still think there's a question about this team because of the quarterback and his trend of turning the ball over too much. But it was Mendoza and 7 other draft picks. Look, Indiana never loses 8 players to the NFL draft. It never happens. I laugh all the time, too, when I hear people say, well, it's going to be different now because Cignetti doesn't have all those James Madison transfers he can rely on. What? These are transfers from James Madison, not transfers from Georgia or Florida or Texas. They're from James Madison, okay? Now, I know that they had a cohesive team, and he brought players that he really believed in. But again, they were from James Madison. It's not like he was cheating the system. Come on. So I think that Indiana's got a great shot to be a top 5 team. I know Brad Powers was on the podcast with you, and he said lay the price with Indiana to be a playoff team, and I agree. I think the Hoosiers are about the closest thing to a lock. When you look at the schedule and the coach and everything combined, I think you could lay $3 with Indiana to be a playoff team, and the Hoosiers are going to be right there. I want to point this out, too. Last year at this time, the highly respected ESPN FPI did not have Indiana in the top 25. Phil Steele had Indiana ranked number 20th. The VSiN preseason top 50 had Indiana number 16. We actually had Indiana ranked better than Phil Steele and the ESPN rankings. Now, 16, we had them ranked too low, obviously. But again, we had more respect for Indiana last year than most others.
Yeah, I just looked up. Our buddy Brett Ciancia had him 23rd. So, yeah,
okay.
Not a lot of people were expecting 16-0 in a national championship. You could have got him at 100-1 at a couple of sports books in season to win the national championship.
Yep.
Another note worth mentioning here, you said this on primetime, I think, either earlier this week or last week. I fully anticipate this being the final year of the cohesion in the coaching staff. At some point, a team is going to take a shot on Mike Shanahan, not the two-time Super Bowl champion Mike Shanahan, the other Mike Shanahan, who's their offensive coordinator, and Brian Haynes, who's their defensive coordinator. The fact that Cignetti's been able to keep those guys is really a testament, and obviously I'm sure they're getting very well compensated. But yeah, Indiana, some challenging games, no doubt. October 17th against Ohio State is going to be a massive one. That game will be in Bloomington, so can't wait to see this Indiana team. Let's get to your top five. Let's go number 5, Texas. I think you and I are similar on, yeah, they're good. They may be really good, but I have Georgia ahead of Texas. I think you do. I know you do as well. So you look at Texas, you have them 5. It's not like you have them 15, but you do have some questions about this Longhorns team.
I think you have to. You got to have questions about Sark, and you have to have questions about Arch. Sark has really been a poor play caller at critical moments in big games over the last few years. And Quinn Ewers and Arch Manning have not exactly delivered all the time in those clutch moments. Now, you're going to hear a lot about how much better Arch was in the second half of the season last year than he was in the first month, and that is true. But also, Texas faced weaker defenses in the second half of last season. I think Arch Manning's maturity will be on display. He's going to look like a much more confident quarterback. The thing that bothered me the most about Arch last season, just poor footwork, sloppy mechanics, throwing sidearm, throwing off his back foot. And I did not expect to see those type of mechanical issues from a Manning. But you bring in Cam Coleman, Auburn transfer, stud receiver. How about Hollywood Smothers, NC State running back? Plenty of talent on offense. Defense should be really good with Will Muschamp back as a defensive coordinator, even though this defense is really solid the last couple of years. I don't think he needed to change the DC. But Will Muschamp's one of those guys who runs up and down the sideline, gets fired up, and the fans love him. But the thing about Texas is I want to see Arch do it against Ohio State, right? I want to see Arch do this against some of the better defenses early in the season. Tim, my questions I think are legitimate. The Longhorns needed Houdini acts to beat Kentucky and Mississippi State last season, and easily could have lost those 2 games. So I still got some questions about this team.
Yeah, I mean, the schedule's not easy. I think when you look at it, Georgia has a bit more favorable schedule. I think Georgia's just slightly better and more complete of a team. There's maybe more sizzle when it comes to Texas, as you alluded to, with Cam Coleman, Ryan Wingo at wide receiver, Emmett Mosley, who was once upon a time sitting there as a member of the Stanford Cardinal, Hollywood Smothers, Raleek Brown. So, yeah, they went heavy in that portal, but, that Week 4 game, Neyland Stadium, I think could be a tricky one. I think people are overlooking what Tennessee potentially could be. So there are some challenges, no doubt, on that schedule outside of the obvious, which is their Week 2 showdown against Ohio State, which is where we land at number 4. Ohio State for you, number 4. A lot of people probably have them at number 1, but like you mentioned, the difference between 1 and 4 is a total of 2 points. So I would say Ohio State fans think Matt Youmans is a hater. You have them at number 4. How dare you, Matt?
Yeah, 2 points worse than Notre Dame. And, the Buckeyes lost a ton of talent to the NFL draft. Tim, I don't care if I know it's a reloading situation, not a rebuilding situation on defense, but I don't care how many 5-stars you're putting out there. Those 5-stars don't have the experience. They're not going to be ready to step in the shoes and play at the level that these NFL draft picks played at last year. So they will be eventually, but they're not going to be right away. I think when you look at Ohio State, it's all about how powerful this offense could be. First off, Julian Sand, 77% completions, 32 touchdowns last season. Bo Jackson, over 1,000 yards rushing. Jeremiah Smith, over 1,200 yards receiving. The offense is insanely talented. It's going to be so tough to stop. How quickly can this defense resemble, a version of the Buckeyes defense from a year ago? Look, Ohio State was number 1 in the nation in scoring defense last year. Indiana was number 2. And the Buckeyes finally got that Michigan monkey, that 4-game losing streak off Ryan Day's back. But now he's got a Kurt Cignetti problem at Indiana. The questions and reason why I don't have Ohio State number 1 like a lot of people do, I think our buddy Brett McMurphy's got Oregon number 1, so he didn't go with Ohio State either. Paul Stone went with Ohio State I believe the Bear, Chris Felica's got Ohio State, and a couple of the polls got Ohio State number one, the magazines. I still have a little bit lower rating on this defense because of all the NFL talent that was lost. And until we see these 5-stars step in and play at somewhere close to that level, I can't rate Ohio State up there with Notre Dame.
Texas, week 2 on the road, revenge spot for the Longhorns at Iowa, October 3rd, at Indiana, October 17th, bye week at USC, a game that, Matt, you will be in attendance at. Then you come home, you play Oregon, you go to Nebraska November 21st, and then you visit or host Michigan to wrap up the season. The schedule is very, very challenging. Win total sitting at 9.5 for the Buckeyes, juice to the over. All right, let's get to the top 3 here, Matt. Number 3, Georgia. This is a team that I have bet to win the SEC. I also bet them over their win total, laid some juice at minus $1.80. Didn't give that out on the podcast, just kind of to cover myself a little bit. But I really like this team. I think they're just slightly getting overlooked, ever so slightly. And you've got Georgia at 3. So I think you and I are on the same wavelength here a little bit, that they are the best team in the SEC heading into the year.
Yeah, I believe so too. And obviously Texas has got a more difficult schedule than Georgia, but the Bulldogs have stuck it to Texas the last couple of years. You know, Tim, we've talked a lot about this being the year of the quarterback in college football. And I talked to Matt Grill at DraftKings. He said all the quarterbacks who were taking action on the Heisman board, nobody's betting Gunnar Stockton. The Georgia senior, I think he's just one of those gutty players that finds ways to get it done. Think about the big plays he made in some of those games last year to pull a win out of the fire for the Bulldogs. He's a dual threat playmaker, 24 TDs passing last season, 10 rushing. He's got Nate Frazier, leading rusher, back there with him in the backfield. I think you can trust Kirby Smart to build an elite defense. And Kirby Smart, 40-5. 40-5 in the SEC since 2021. So I've got Georgia as a top-rated team in the SEC, and I believe Georgia, double-check, that's my number 3 team, correct? Yes.
Yeah, that's your number 3 team in your power rating. So let's wrap with your top 2, and that would be Oregon at 2, Notre Dame at 1. What was the difference between 1 and 2, and why did you end up landing with the Irish at number 1 in your initial power ratings?
Well, it's a point difference, so it's not much. It's actually less than a point. It's like 0.75. But again, I don't want to say Notre Dame's got the best defense in college football. I hate to make that sort of statement. I mean, let's just say it's a top 5 defense, top 3 defense. It's hard to say who's going to be number 1, but there's a chance Notre Dame could have the number 1 defense in college football. CJ Carr is a quarterback I believe in. I've got CJ Carr rated higher than Dante Moore. That might be what the difference comes down to when I rate these teams. I've got Notre Dame's defense a little bit better, and I've got CJ Carr a little bit better than Dante Moore. And I know that Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price are gone, 2 first-round running backs, but that goes back to what I said about running backs, receivers, often are replaceable. That doesn't bother me that much when I'm making a rating on a team. Aeneas Williams, Kedron Young, Nolan James. I looked at the depth chart. Notre Dame's got plenty of talent at running back. They should be okay. Offensive line ranks among the nation's best. And again, I think the receiving core is going to be pretty good for CJ Carr as well. Defense, elite. And the bottom line for Notre Dame, Marcus Freeman's going to have this team highly motivated with something to prove. And they're going to play with that proverbial chip on their shoulder. And I like that too. That's kind of an intangible I put in the rating. I think Notre Dame's a highly motivated team going into this season. So it was no doubt for me that Notre Dame was number 1, but Oregon was a close second. But I knew Notre Dame was going to be my number 1 team pretty much all summer.
All right, Matt, let's get to a couple of your best bets. And once again, you could read the entire top 50, a collaboration of Matt and Paul Stone, their top 50 power-rated teams in the VSiN College Football Betting Guide. Matt previewed the Pac-12, which we're going to dive into extensively here in just a moment. But a couple of best bets, and we've talked about a handful of these on VSiN Primetime. Let's stay in the Big Ten, and let's go with Michigan. Kyle Whittingham comes in to replace Sharon Moore. What a disaster of a situation that was to wrap things up. And their win total sits at 8.5. The juice has moved a little bit here on the under. You grabbed it at minus $1.60. I know producer Wyatt is not thrilled by your pessimism on the Michigan Wolverines, but the schedule is really challenging when you think about the teams that they play in the Big Ten, in addition to a Week 2 showdown in the Big House against Oklahoma.
Yeah, look, I really like the Kyle Whittingham hire. I think that's a home run. He's lost a bit off his fastball. You know, he made some game management decisions the last couple of years at Utah that had me scratching my head, and I said, that's not a Kyle Whittingham type decision. But he was there 21 years as head coach. What was it, Tim? Was it 30 or 31 total years at Utah? I mean,
he's been there since the early 90s. So yeah. he's a grown ass man just at Utah.
He is. Unlike the immature child that was coaching Michigan last season. That Michigan coaching staff last year was a mess, and you could see it, and I was capitalizing on that, betting against that team in a bunch of situations, including that game at USC. Look, Michigan was such a mess last year. The Wolverines barely escaped beating Purdue in Ann Arbor last season. That was a really poor performance. Look, I've got Michigan under 8.5. At Circa right now, it's minus 170, so that's not too bad. That's a fair price. The price has been going up on this, but again, the Big Ten's loaded. Ohio State, Oregon, Indiana, 3 teams you and I have already talked about. I think the Wolverines have been losing ground here the last couple of years in terms of talent since Jim Harbaugh left, and with the coaching staff not being nearly as strong as it was a few years ago. The coaching staff last year did a horrendous job with freshman quarterback Bryce Underwood, did not develop him at all. So this new staff's got to just kind of rebuild him from the ground up. And the schedule's degree of difficulty is extremely high. You're going to play the Buckeyes and the Ducks on the road. Now, the good thing is those games are late in the season, but you got to play Ohio State and Oregon on the road. Wolverines host Indiana, Iowa, Penn State, and Oklahoma. I think the best case scenario when you look at the schedule is 9-3. So I want to bet against a best case scenario because obviously you could have injuries, plenty of things could go wrong over the course of a season. And Tim, we're just talking about the toughest games on the schedule. Wolverines could go on the road and lose at a place like Minnesota too. That's not out of the question. So I like the Kyle Whittingham hire. That's a huge positive. But I think almost everything would have to go right for this team to win 9 games. I think it's going to be probably a 7-5, 8-4 situation. I played Michigan under 8.5 at minus 160.
Yeah, and one of the sandwich spots of the season is late in that season where it's not a road game, so it's not as bad as it possibly could be. But how about November 14th at Oregon, your number 2 power-rated team, the rivalry game of all rivalry games, November 28th, and then in the middle, they have to host UCLA, which leads us into your next win total, which is over 6.5 wins at plus money on UCLA. You could play over 5.5 at a juice price at DraftKings. So if you'd rather do that, certainly look around. But you are buying in on Bob Chesney, the former James Madison coach, heading out to Westwood. He looks the part, man. He's a suave-looking cat out there in L.A. Nico Iamaleava still is his quarterback. A lot of those pieces coming in with him, including Wayne Knight, the running back. No, not the guy from Seinfeld. So a lot of pieces go with Bob Chesney out to Westwood.
I didn't get that reference. Who was Wayne Knight on Seinfeld?
He's Newman.
Which guy? Oh, he was Newman? Okay.
Yeah, Wayne Knight. It's his name. It's an actor's name.
I didn't know that was his name. I know Newman. I didn't know his name was Wayne Knight. Look, I love the Bob Chesney hire at UCLA. I thought that was just a really, really smart hire by the Bruins. And this team was, left for dead by a lot of people early last season. And then the coaching change happened, and the Bruins ripped off a few wins and stunned a lot of people. There's still talent in this program. I think that, this new coaching staff could turn Nico into a competent quarterback. He's got the physical ability. And really what did it for me, this is my most recent bet, is UCLA over. Now, you could play UCLA over 5.5 and lay 170, or you could play over 6.5 at plus 110. I did a little bit of both, but I bet more over 6.5 at plus 110. And the reason is when you look at this schedule, Tim, if the Bruins beat Cal in that opener, you're going to love where you stand on this win total with UCLA, because look at the schedule the rest of the way. It's Bob Chesney. Looks like he scripted this schedule. They got Bruins have a bunch of home games they can win at the Rose Bowl in Pasadena. I plan to go to the first 2 home games that UCLA has against San Diego State and Purdue. And I think the Bruins get off to a hot start and probably go 7-5, something like that. But I definitely think this is at least a 6-6 team. So you can play over 5.5, you can play over 6.5, but the schedule sets up really well. And I think this new coaching staff, led by Chesney, is going to have the Bruins taking a big leap this season.
Yeah, you got Cal to start the season, like you mentioned, on the road. It's a toss-up game. It's the shortest point spread of week 1. Then you have San Diego State, a team we're going to get into here in just a little bit with your Pac-12 preview, where I know you're not too high on. Purdue at Maryland, certainly a winnable game. You get Wisconsin, Michigan State, Nevada, 3 straight home games there. And then, you wrap up with Illinois and then USC at home. So, the last guy to lead James Madison and had a preseason win total of 5.5 did pretty well. And that would be Kirk Cignetti. All of us, I think, at VSiN had over 5.5, Matt, back in 2024 when they won 11 regular season games and made it to the playoff. Speaking of Purdue, their former coach, Jeff Brom, at Louisville. And this is a guy that you and I love to back in the underdog role. Week 1, they're an underdog against Ole Miss. They've got a big showdown in week 3 against SMU at home. They've got a unique situation at quarterback. I took a dart throw on their QB1, Lincoln Kienholz, to win the Heisman Trophy at 110-1. Why do you like Louisville to go over their win total of 7.5? And also, you've got a stab at them to win the ACC this year.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in Jeff Brom, obviously, going back to his days at Purdue. And he had Purdue in the Big Ten title game in 2022. Imagine that.
It's crazy.
And not only that, in that game, Purdue, it was a 14-13 game against Michigan at halftime. Purdue outgained Michigan by, I think, 120 yards in that game. Brom can coach. He's 28-12 at Louisville. He's better as a dog than he is as a favorite. Keep that in mind. You definitely want to look at Jeff Brom more as an underdog. He's an overachiever when it comes to that. His leading rusher, Isaac Brown, is back. You got an experienced offensive line, to me, that looks outstanding. And, I'm not sure about the defense, but I think the defense is going to be good enough. And Lincoln Kienholz, a quarterback, I don't know if you call him Kienholz or Kienholz, but we'll find out when the Heisman campaign launches. Kienholz for Heisman. Look, he just barely lost out on the Ohio State quarterback job a year ago. He's a dual threat QB, and I think Jeff Brom's he went after him for a reason. He's going to bring the best out of him. And when you look at the Cardinals' schedule, they host SMU and Pitt, and they don't play Miami and Clemson. Hey, and by the way, Jeff Brom was a 2-touchdown underdog at Miami last year and won the game outright. I believe in Brom. I'm playing Louisville over the total, and I think Louisville can win the ACC at plus 850.
Yeah, and if you want to be a little bit more conservative, Louisville to make the ACC championship, not to win it, just to make it, is 3-1 right now at DraftKings. So unique market there if you want to go that direction instead. But I'll say one thing, Matt, certainly don't think it'll be an upset, but you mentioned Jeff Brom as a favorite. How about this weird situational spot? So they play Sunday, Labor Day weekend in Nashville against Ole Miss, a preseason top 10 team. Week 3, they host SMU in what could be the determination between who makes it to the ACC championship and who doesn't. And then on Friday night in Louisville, Matt, they have to play a top 10 FCS team in Villanova. So that, if that's a lofty number, could be just a sluggish game. So keep your eyes peeled on how big that number is for Villanova, a top 10 FCS program against Louisville, who will be on short rest and without a doubt in a massive sandwich spot. But Matt, let's get into the Pac-12, the conference that you wrote up for the VSiN College Football Betting Guide. And we'll start with the betting favorite, a team that is the betting favorite also to be the Group of 6 representative in the college football playoff, Boise State. This conference is bizarre. I've discussed how much I hate the fact that they splintered off from the Mountain West, but there's nothing we can do about it now. when you look at this Boise State team, opens up the year at Oregon, 24.5-point underdogs. Maddox Madsen is back for another season at Boise. They won the Mountain West a year ago and then got blown out in their bowl game. What do you expect to see from this Boise State team in year one of this new look Pac-12?
I think Boise's good. I don't think the Broncos are great. And, last season started off in the worst way possible for the Broncos. They lost 34-7 at South Florida. And then in the bowl game, they were not competitive against Washington. Lost 38-10 in the LA Bowl. I think the talent level's a little bit down here. And even though Boise's good, I think that a lot of people don't know how to rate these teams properly because they just look at the Pac-12 and say, well, Boise's always at the top of the Mountain West. Boise's going to be at the top of the Pac-12. The beat goes on. Well, maybe it does, but not so fast. There's a team in the Pac-12 I like a little bit better. And Maddox Madsen is back at quarterback, but he was not great last season. He's 20-6 in his career as a starter, but he had injuries last season. He played poorly at times, and he dipped last season to 58.3% completions, 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He threw 4 picks in that 28-7 loss at Notre Dame. If I look across the board here, Boise, I don't have a higher rating on this team as a lot of people do. And I think that, when you look at the offensive line, it's a little bit weaker. Running game's a little bit weaker. Is the defense strong enough? I'm not sure. How about this, Tim? Here's a number about the Boise defense going to be a little bit concerning. In 2024, Boise led the nation with 55 sacks on defense. Last year, that number dipped all the way to 27. So this obviously the talent level's down, and to me the arrow is pointing a little bit down on this team. Now, when you look at the schedule, you could still make a really strong case for over 7.5. But I am not picking Boise to win the Pac-12.
The team that you are picking to win the Pac-12, and a couple weeks, maybe a month ago on VSiN Primetime, you and I were talking about this team, and we made a play at Circa on their win total, which was 6.5, -20 at the time. It's now -45 right now at Circa. And also, it's worth noting, and we've talked about it a bit here on the podcast, but for those of you just kind of circling in as we get closer to the start of the season, they have this weird flex game. Circa includes the 12th game in their win total. So if you're looking to bet overs, bet it at a place like Circa. DraftKings makes it really clear. It's 11 games. So if you bet Fresno State over 6.5 at DraftKings, you're not getting that 12th game, which is a flex game. So all that being said, Matt, you like this Fresno State team, the boys from the Valley, to win the Pac-12. And also worth noting, Fresno State will host their flex game. So you know who the home teams are. We don't know the matchups, but Fresno State over under 6.5 right now, -145 at Circa. What do you like about this Fresno State team?
Yeah, I bet this over 6.5 at a better number. I bet it a couple times. I bet Fresno to win the league at +650 too. So Tim, about a year ago at this actually July of 2025, you and I had Matt Entz, the new coach of Fresno State, in studio in VSiN Primetime during Mountain West Media Days. And I think we both said the same thing when he walked out after that segment. That guy's impressive. He's going to win. And he's a bet-on coach. There's some coaches you hear talk, and you're like, yeah, I want to bet against that guy. And there are some coaches you say, I want to bet on that guy. Matt Entz is one of those coaches. He's 53. He's still a pretty young guy. At North Dakota State, 2 FCS national championships in 5 years and a record of 60-11. So he takes over a Fresno team that had a losing record the previous season, and he goes 9-4 despite mediocre quarterback play. He had Kurt Warner's son, EJ, at quarterback, and Fresno's got a new quarterback this season. Still some questions about the QB, but I'll get to that in a moment. I think Matt Entz has got Fresno pointed to the top of the Pac-12 here. And the reason I say that is I think Fresno's probably got the best offensive line and defensive line in the conference. And not only do they have the best offensive line, they got the best 2 running backs as well. I think the running game is going to dominate here this season. Even if the quarterback doesn't turn out to be a star, And Christian Martin, the Maryland transfer, is a dual threat guy at 6'4", 230. I mean, you would look at on paper, you would say, man, he's got a chance to be really good. Well, I haven't seen him play, so I don't know. But I would say that even if the quarterback is not a star, you've got leading receiver Josiah Freeman, who's back, and you got a great running game, great offensive line to support that quarterback. So I think that Fresno is going to be fine offensively. If Christian Martin turns into a really good QB, how much better off are you going to be? But if you look at the Fresno running game, you got Bryson Donaldson and Rayshawn Speedy Luke. I think the best two running backs in the conference. Those guys combined for 1,300 yards and 11 touchdowns last season. And that's going to be the key is the running game, the offensive line, the defensive line, and the coaching. All Matt Entz does is win, and I think that's all he's going to do this season. Now, he's got a tough game early at USC where Fresno's a 24.5-point dog, I believe, right now. I'd probably take the points there because I think Fresno can hold its own on the offensive and defensive lines against USC. But if you look at the rest of the schedule, why can't Fresno win 8 games or 9 games? I think this is going to be a really good over bet. Bet the 12-game line, though, over 6.5, and include that 12th flex game. And also, you could ladder this win total a little bit if you want to, because I think Fresno's, like I said, clearly going to be an 8-win or 9-win type of team. So over 6.5, I think, is a cheap number. And by the way, I believe over the summer that number was actually 5.5 at BetMGM or a couple spots. That was really a bad number. Yeah.
Yeah, there were a couple people that we know that got that 5.5. I only got 6.5, but was happy to lay the $1.20 on it. So you and I are aligned, and I'll just tip my cap to you. I think you kind of tipped me off to Fresno State here. Let's power our way through
one more thing here, Tim.
Yeah,
one more thing on Fresno State. I wanted to double check this last year, but Fresno, I believe, was a 17-point underdog at Boise last year and won the game 30-7. Right? That means something, doesn't it? That's got to mean something. Now, I know Fresno had a couple of bad losses last season, well, one being at Colorado State, but that type of win makes a statement. Matt Entz in his first year at Boise was catching 17 and won the game 30-7. So that made a big impression on me as well.
Yeah, I would just say this. I don't know how long Matt Entz is going to be there at Fresno State, and I think this could be a big year for him, as you alluded to. So with that, a team that right now, based off of the odds, is the second shot is San Diego State. They went 9-3 in the regular season a year ago. They had that epic game at the end of the season on a Friday down in New Mexico. They lost it in double overtime to the Lobos. I think you and I both had the Lobos in that game. So this is a San Diego State team that, last year beat Boise State. But remember, that was an ugly game. I think Maddox Madsen didn't play. I think you were at that game, right, Matt? San Diego State, Boise?
I was. It rained all night, and I got drenched, but I had San Diego State in that game. I had a winner, so I was happy. Walked away soaking wet, but when you win, it doesn't matter. The Aztecs beat Cal. How about that? They beat Cal 34-0 last season and beat Boise 17-7. But you're right, Maddox Madsen did not play in that game, and the Boise backup quarterback was incompetent. He had no chance to move the offense.
So when you look at this San Diego State team right now, you can lay $1.70 under 7.5 for 11 games at DraftKings. So that does not include that flex game. So if you do like the under, could be something to look at there. They've got 3 true toss-ups in the non-con. If you want to include UCLA, at UCLA, home to James Madison, at Toledo, and then you get into the conference portion of the schedule. They do have to go on the road to Boise State. 7.5 under -170 at DraftKings with 11 games, not including that 12th game, to me is kind of appealing there. I haven't bet it yet, but I'm curious your breakdown of this Aztec team.
Well, I think the Aztecs lost a ton of talent on defense, and what we've known San Diego State football for over the last 20, 25 years has been stud running backs and outstanding defenses. And they have a stud running back in Lucky Sutton. He's back again this year. Lucky Sutton ran for 1,297 yards last year, including 150 in that on that rainy night against Boise State. He led the Mountain West in rushing. He is not a receiving threat whatsoever out of the backfield, but he's a workhorse running back, and I think that's going to be the strength of this team because Lucky Sutton is a star. I don't know about the quarterback, Jaden Denigal. He obviously had an injury he was dealing with last season. It was a shoulder injury, and he threw 58.8% completions, 9 touchdowns, 8 picks. Didn't have much of a passing offense, and to me, that's a big concern going into this season because Sean Lewis is a coach who likes a high-flying passing attack, and I don't think he's going to have that this season. I think this San Diego State offense is going to be built based on the running game with Lucky Sutton. Now, the defense to me is a major concern when you think about the talent that was lost last year. And Chris Johnson was a first-round pick. He was 27th overall. He's a cornerback, went to the Miami Dolphins. He was a star. But again, Aztecs threw 2 shutouts last year. They allowed more than 24 points only 3 times. They ranked number 6 in the nation in scoring defense at 15.4 points, right up there with Ohio State, Indiana, Miami, Texas Tech. But this defense is going to be nowhere near as good as it was. I don't think there's any chance this defense could be as strong. Huge holes in the secondary, and that's my biggest concern here with the Aztecs. And I think you got to bet San Diego State under the win total. If you look at the schedule, there's not too many cupcakes on it, and I think the Pac-12 is going to be a little bit better than some people think, top to bottom. I'm going to go San Diego State under the win total. I have not bet this yet, but that's what I like here.
Let's hit on a couple teams before we wrap up and hit your best bets here, Matt. Texas State, G.J. Kinney enters year number 5 as the head coach of the Bobcats. This is a big step up for them in class, you would imagine, from the Sun Belt here to the Pac-12. But one of the burning questions that you wrote up in the guide was, is Brad Jackson the best quarterback in the Pac-12? So what say you? Does Texas State have the best quarterback in the conference?
Well, they could have the best quarterback because Maddox Madsen's got something to prove at Boise State. And we just talked about Fresno and San Diego State, and they got questions about those quarterbacks. So Brad Jackson, 71.3% completions last season, 3,224 yards and 21 touchdowns, only 7 picks. He also ran for 744 yards and 17 touchdowns. That's 38 total TDs. He was only a sophomore. He's only a sophomore now. The Bobcats ranked 12th in the nation in scoring offense, 36.5 points a game, 472 yards per game. Now, they are going to face better defenses this season. There's no question about that. But they also bring back 2 of the top receivers in the league, Bo Sparks, Chris Dawn. Offensive line's inexperienced, but it's looks like a big physical offensive line. And I think what you look for here with Texas State, Tim, the defense looks like a real weakness. You could have some really high-scoring games with this team. I'm going to look over the total and some of the matchups that could point that direction early in the season. I think Texas State's offense is going to put up a lot of points, and the defense is going to give up a lot too.
So a bet that I did make, and I gave it out on the pod, Colorado State over their win total of 3.5. A lot of it just had to do with their coach. Jim Mora Jr., you think back to his 4 years at UConn, what he was able to pull out there in Stores was magical. I mean, not Kirk Cignetti magical, but still to take them to a bowl game in their first year, back-to-back 9-win seasons. And he brings a good chunk of those pieces with him to Colorado State. I thought Jim Mora Jr., to me, was one of the best hires of the entire offseason for Colorado State after their nightmare of a season a year ago to bring in a guy like Jim Mora. So I don't know if there's a ton of numbers backing it, but it's just I know what this guy's capable of. And getting over 3.5 wins at -1, I think I laid -115 or -120 on it was a bet that I wanted to make. How did you break down Colorado State this year?
Well, there's obviously a lot of questions with the defense. Rams' defense was rotten the last season, but Jim Mora, I think he went 9-4 and 9-3 the last 2 years, right, at UConn?
Yep.
It's pretty damn impressive. And I like him a lot as a coach. I remember when he wanted the UNLV job, I want to say about, was that about 6 years ago or so? And UNLV went a different direction. He would have been a great hire here at the time when UNLV instead hired the Oregon offensive coordinator who turned out to be a clown. Anyway, Jim Mora opens with home games against Wyoming and Southern Utah. And then you got the BYU game in Fort Collins on September 19th. Otherwise, I think there's some games in the schedule that the Rams can win. I don't think it's a huge leap of faith on your part to say that he's going to win 4 games or more this season. And let's see, the circle win total 3.5. That includes the 12th flex game. I can only bet this over the win total. I wouldn't be that surprised if Jim Mora gets Colorado State to 6-6. Certainly 5-7 or 6-6 is reasonable or realistic for this Rams team.
Well, there's a positivity coming out of Colorado State, not so much out of Colorado, where media members are getting in trouble for tweeting about practice. But that's a whole discussion for another day. Before we get to your best bets, Matt, anything else to note here in the Pac-12? Make sure you go read the Pac-12 preview. We did not hit on Wazoo, Oregon State, or Utah State. Anything else of note for those 3 teams?
Not really. I think that Washington State's got a chance to be pretty good. I think Oregon State's got a chance to be really bad. Oregon State's win total's 3.5. I can only play that under. I think Beavers probably got to be at the bottom of the Pac-12 most likely.
I mean, I'll just point this out. I was bored on a Wednesday night, and I was looking at the top 10 FCS teams, and if any of them play FBS teams, they all do, including Montana going to Oregon State. And I don't know what AD decided to make that decision. That is a poor choice. Yeah. I think the Grizz will be very live in week 3 up in Corvallis. There are far worse FCS teams out there, Oregon State administration. You don't need to bring in a team that is perennially, a top 5 FCS program. All right, Matt, before we let you run, Matt and I will be back. Can't wait. Every Thursday during the season, our Week 0 episode will have a gorgeous backdrop live from Honolulu, but give us your win totals and your futures that you will have in pocket heading into this year.
Yeah, Tim, the next time we do this show, and I think that's going to be from Hawaii in a couple weeks, I'll have a much longer list. I've got my eyes on a bunch more futures bets here in college football, but so far, I'm just going to tell you the ones I have in pocket. Fresno State over 6.5 wins. Fresno to win the Pac-12 plus 650. Louisville over 7.5 wins. Louisville to win the ACC at plus 850. Michigan under 8.5 wins. And UCLA over 6.5. And like I said, that's 6 plays right now, but I'll probably have, 6 to 10 more by the next time we do this podcast.
And that'll be 2 weeks from today, August 27th, out in Honolulu, our Week 0 preview and all of our best bets that we have. I'll give you my best bets on the other side of the break. But, Matt, as always, appreciate it, and I will talk to you later tonight on VSiN Primetime.
All right, you bet, buddy. Thanks.
There he is, Matt Youmans. Quick break. We'll come back right here on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. All right, we're back on the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast. Thanks, as always, to Matt Youmans. It feels close, doesn't it? Feels real having Youmans back on the pod. He'll be off next Thursday, and then starting the 27th of August, it's go time, baby. Every Thursday, me and Matt breaking it down for you guys. And just a reminder, continue to hit us with those 5-star reviews. It does help out the podcast. We're trying to grow, trying to get back in that top 100 like we were last year at the start of the college football season on iTunes, Spotify, and the YouTube channel, man. I'm really pumped that we continue to grow the YouTube channel, youtube.com/college football betting podcast. Every episode up there, video component will be with you all season long. So continue, if you haven't done so by now, hit the subscribe button on YouTube. You can also hit us up with an email, cfbpod@vsin.com. And lastly, Twitter, @1TimMurray, @MattYoumans247. I'll give you my bets, a little recap of what we've done so far here on the podcast. And I know some of these numbers have moved. I don't love rehashing them because a handful of you will be just loading up on podcasts here before the start of the season, and some of these numbers have moved. But I did want to recap it, do a little bit of a self-assessment of where we sit right now. But with Matt putting Notre Dame at number 1 and the Irish not being in a conference, and we have already previewed the ACC with Adam Burke, some of the G6 conferences with Adam Burke. I obviously recommend go back and listen to those. We talked to Wes Reynolds and broke down the Big Ten, JVT with the SEC and the Mountain West. I wanted to dive into Notre Dame just a little bit. And before you start rolling your eyes and think this is a homer play here right now, I do look at the situation for the Irish in the betting market as a challenge because everything is really taxed, right? You look at their title odds, their co-favorites at DraftKings and a handful of other spots with Ohio State. Their win total is outrageously high at 11.5. And I know our buddy Chris the Madman Macero likes under on their win total. I can't push back on it. You know, they've got 3 games. I wouldn't really call SMU November 21st in South Bend a toss-up, but I think BYU will be a challenge. And this nugget from Brett McMurphy, shout out to the stash, BYU against top 10 teams at home, 7-0 ATS, 6-1 straight up. So there's certainly a big opportunity there for BYU. I have more concerns about BYU than Matt does. Matt putting BYU at number 9. I think the loss of those wide receivers is going to be a big challenge, but his points are more than fair when you think about the continuity, losing nobody in the portal, no transfers in the portal, and you got to go to Provo. Now, early reports, nothing locked in, but early reports are that game could be an afternoon game, which I think is a massive benefit for the Irish. Miami and SMU, both at home, are both going to be evening games. But how do we bet Notre Dame? I don't know. You know, I think the one bet that jumps out to me would be Notre Dame to reach the semifinal. FanDuel has that, I believe, priced at plus 135. I don't really want to bet them to win the title at this point. I don't think there's much value at 6 or 7 to 1. I'm not going to bet over 11.5 or to have a perfect season because, a lot of things can go wrong. You saw Todd Furman via Brad Powers tweet out the biggest drop-off in Brad Powers' power ratings from starter to backup, and it's Notre Dame. He has it at 8 points, and a lot of it has to do with, yes, the talent of CJ Carr, but also the uncertainty of the Notre Dame backup quarterback situation, which is all freshmen, whether it be Blake Hebert, who is a redshirt freshman, Noah Grubbs, or Teddy Gerard, who are true freshmen. Teddy Gerard, probably the most talented, but he should be a high school senior right now. So nothing on the win total for me. You could bet them to miss the playoff. I know I've gotten a couple of tweets from people saying 5 to 1 to miss the playoff. I'll say this. If they go 10-2, I know the new stipulation, if they're top 12, they get in. With this schedule, if they go 10-2, they're not making the playoff. I am pretty confident in saying that with how loaded the SEC is, how challenging their schedules are, the Big Ten and the track record they have. I think 10-2 Notre Dame is left out. So for me, from a betting standpoint, season long, the only thing I would look at is to reach the semifinal, which once again, I think is plus 135 over at FanDuel. And, if you want to bet under 11.5 based off of recent developments of Stephen A. Smith for some odd reason coming to talk to the Notre Dame football team, I wouldn't blame you in that. But all kidding aside, just looking at this team, doing a little bit of a deep dive on the Irish, since Marcus Freeman has become the head coach of Notre Dame is the best cover team week to week in college football, believe it or not. They are sitting at 34-18-2. That's a cover percentage of 65.4%. So this is going back to 2022. Does not include their loss when he took over on an interim basis at Oklahoma. I guess he was at that point the full-time head coach, but it does not include that Fiesta Bowl loss to Oklahoma State. Number 2 is Texas Tech, 33-19-1, 63.5%. Number 3, this might surprise you, the Troy Trojans over the last 4 seasons, third best cover team in college football at 34-20. Then you get Ohio State at 4, Oregon at 5, and we got to give a shout out to our guy Timmy Chang. How about Hawaii? 6th best cover team in college football since 2022 at 30-19-1, and we know how strong they've been on their home field. So The positives about Notre Dame, you got to start with the quarterback. I think CJ Carr legitimately is the best quarterback they've had since Brady Quinn, and I think could be better than Brady Quinn. At this point, you can't say he's better than Brady Quinn, the prolific numbers that he put up in 05 and 06. But CJ Carr, I think, has a chance to be the number one pick. I think plus 650 for him to be the number one overall pick is not a bad futures bet to make based off of the season. I'd much rather bet CJ Carr to go number one overall than to bet him to win the Heisman Trophy. I don't know if CJ Carr is going to have crazy Joe Burrow-esque numbers because of the schedule. Notre Dame, outside of BYU, Miami, and SMU, is going to be a 3-touchdown favorite or more in every game. And when your eyes are on the prize of a national championship, you're going to want to get him out of the game to keep him healthy. So I don't think CJ Carr is going to have massive eye-opening numbers. Now, if they go 12-0 and he's a starting quarterback and he's got really proficient numbers, which is what he had a year ago from a proficiency standpoint, yeah, he'll be in New York, but is he a good bet at the top of the odds board to win the Heisman Trophy? Once again, back to my initial start. No, he's not. I really don't think so. Maybe during the season, we could look at an opportunity there to bet on CJ Carr. So the positives, CJ Carr. Positives, the offensive line. They did lose a little bit of depth during camp here with Matty Augustine, who was supposed to be kind of their number 6 offensive lineman. He's dealing with an injury, but overall, offensive line should be a strength. A lot of pieces coming back. The defense, Matt said it. He doesn't know if they're the best defense in the country. I think that's fair, but I think top 3 is very accurate when you look at this defense. I think this is the best defensive line Notre Dame has had from a depth standpoint in a long, long time. Probably going back, let's be honest, maybe to the Holtz era, when you just look at the pieces that they're able to bring. Boubacar Traore off the edge could be a first-round pick. They bring in Francis Brew from Pittsburgh, who was, top 25 in the Freaks list over by Bruce Feldman on The Athletic. They bring in a Tion Gray from Oregon. Now, this gives a shot to Oregon in a positive way that their depth at defensive line is so damn good that Tion Gray could transfer to Notre Dame and be an immediate contributor. They also bring in kind of a high upside unknown in Keon Keeley. Once upon a time, a 5-star recruit, was fine with Alabama, but never really lived up to that 5-star billing. He's now at Notre Dame. Bryce Young, Jason Onye, some of the other pieces that they have on the defensive line. So the depth is really strong there. And how about this? A little inside the weeds. They went out and got Charlie Partridge at defensive line. And I was talking to Brad Powers about this, and he believes that Charlie Partridge is the best defensive line coach in the sport in college football, coming in from the Indianapolis Colts. Defensive at the linebacker position, Drake Bowen, he's got to be a tackling machine. But for me, the athleticism of a Kingston Viliamuasa, if he's fully healthy, massive upgrade for Notre Dame. He was there last year, tore his ACL. Early reports in camp was that he could be ready for the Wisconsin game. And then lastly, you look at the secondary. I think Leonard Moore is probably not going to have eye-popping statistics because no one's going to throw at him. You think back to Sauce Gardner in 2021 with Cincinnati. Kobe Bryant, if I remember correctly, in 21 was the one reaping the benefits of getting thrown at. So Leonard Moore, lockdown corner, I think best defensive player in college football this year. Jeremiah Smith even sang his praises, I want to say, last year at Big Ten Media Day as the best corner he had faced. On the other side, that's the question. They went out and they got a transfer from Colorado and DJ McKinney, who's played a ton of college snaps. You also have, some intriguing prospects like Jaden Sanders, a transfer from Michigan. They're moving Christian Gray into nickel. And then the safety should be studs when you look at a Bruante Johnson and a Don Schuler. Defense doesn't concern me at all. Now, November 7th against Miami, when you have a Malachi Toney and a Cooper Barcade and a Mark Fletcher and a offensive line that has been working with Mario Cristobal for 2+ months in gameplay and a Darian Mensah, yeah, that defense will be tested big time there. But heading up to that, even the BYU game, I think they're going to have to show their strength against the BYU. But as I talked about with Matt, I'm not too worried about the playmakers out wide against the Notre Dame. I think Bachmeier and LJ Martin, they're going to try to grind that game against the Irish. So maybe early look, maybe an under in Notre Dame, BYU. Concerns, wide receiver. I like this wide receiver room, but they don't have Jeremiah Smith. They don't have Malachi Toney. They don't have Cam Coleman. They don't even have Ryan Wingo of Texas, right? They don't have Chris Henry of Ohio State. They don't have a superstar. They have a really good player in Jordan Faison. They have a question mark in Jaden Greathouse, showed what he was capable of against Penn State and Ohio State in the college football playoff 2 years ago. And then they have kind of a wild card. And that would be Mylan Graham, the transfer from Ohio State. I personally was hoping Notre Dame would go get someone like Nick Marsh from Michigan State or a Reed Harris from Boston College. But they decided to bring in 2 transfers from Ohio State and hope on the upside there. And one of them, in Quincy Porter, has been dealing with a lot of injuries. But yeah, I look at this team. And lastly, the running back position. Matt mentioned it. Jadarian Price, he's in Seattle. I bet him to win Offensive Rookie of the Year at 9-1. Jeremiah Love, winner of the Running Back of the Year, Doak Walker. They're both gone. Aeneas Williams steps in, and, we will see. Lastly, to sum it up here on Notre Dame, the mantra this year is leave no doubt. So is that an opportunity for us as bettors from a game-to-game basis? These numbers are going to be way high. And you saw it in the game of the year market. BYU Notre Dame opening up 11.5. That has since been bet down to 10. You look at Notre Dame Miami. BetMGM opened at 5.5. That got bet up to 7. I think DraftKings opened 7.5. That's come down a little bit as well. Notre Dame is going to be very, very expensive this year. So that is the unique challenge. I think this team, in my opinion, for someone who has watched this team from birth, this is the best team they've had top to bottom since the early 90s. That said, some of those teams in the early 90s didn't win national championships. Actually, none of them won a national championship. A couple losses here and there. Now, could you say if there was a playoff in the early 90s would Notre Dame have won a title? I don't know. If ifs and buts were candy and nuts, the world would be a better place. So we will see. I think this Notre Dame team is legitimately a top 4 team in the country. If I had to make a bet right now, it would be them to reach the semifinal, because if they go undefeated, then they're going to have a favorable matchup in that quarterfinal game. However, it is worth noting, Notre Dame, when they made their run in 2024, they played a game in December, right? They played Indiana. We've seen teams, not all of them, Indiana got the bye and dominated in the Rose Bowl, but they played a Big Ten championship game. If Notre Dame gets a bye, they wouldn't play football for over a month. They would play their final game at Syracuse Thanksgiving weekend, and then they wouldn't play until, December 30th or New Year's Day. So really high on this Irish team, but to me, to sum it up on a betting podcast, I just don't know if there's a ton of bettable things right now on Notre Dame, unless you want to fade all of the excitement that is out there from yours truly, amongst all these other folks that are out there that think this Notre Dame team is capable of winning a national championship. And there's certainly a lot of juicy prices out there on them to miss the playoff. If you want to go under their win total, a lot of different ways to look at it. But I think this is an 11-1 team at worst. I do think there's a good chance they go 12-0, and then you just got to hope that the bracket breaks your way and that you're playing deep into January. The depth, I think, really helps them this year. But you lose CJ Carr, as Brad Powers pointed out in his power ratings, all bets are off, man, because the biggest drop-off in his eyes from the starter to the backup in college football from a power rating standpoint is in South Bend with CJ Carr to the trio of freshmen. All right, before we get out of here, just to recap the bets that we have made this year. Most of these I've given out on the podcast. One that I haven't, I gave that on VSiN Primetime, and it's on vsin.com. I'm going to go under in Hawaii Stanford. Last year, final score 23-20. It was really kind of an ugly game to start off that season. You think back, I think there was an early turnover for Micah Alejado. I want to say he got sacked in the end zone too, so they gave away some points. I think Tavita Pritchard in his first game as the head coach of Stanford, his alma mater was Andrew Luck's backup. I think they're going to lean into their ground game, lead into their trenches, and I think they're going to want to grind this out. Hawaii's dealt with some injuries at the wide receiver position, with Pefeli Ashlock being lost for the foreseeable future. Still excited about Micah Alejado, but I expect this game on August 29th on ACC Network. I expect it to be more of a lower scoring game, somewhere in that 24-17 range, somewhere in that ballpark. So under 49.5, a bet for me in week 0. We'll certainly have more 2 weeks from today. 2 Heisman futures. We broke these down with Dustin Sweetelson, Devin Dampier, because I have to. It is morally obligated here on this podcast. 90-1 for Devin Dampier to win the Heisman Trophy. His offensive coordinator does leave to go to Michigan. And then Lincoln Kienholz, man, the one that I'll be honest, I'm going to look like a complete and utter buffoon if they lose that week 1 game and he looks like crap. But man, am I fired up about this 110-1 ticket on Lincoln Kienholz there with Jeff Brom. Couple of big opportunities early on in the season. 5 win totals, including it started with, shout out to my guy Duck, Joshua Nunn, UConn under 6.5, Air Force over 6.5. I think the Fly guys have a real chance to maybe even win the Mountain West this year. Florida State under 6.5, paid some juice there. Colorado State over 3.5. Make sure you play that with the 12 games. And Fresno State over 6.5. Once again, play that with the 12 games. And then 2 conference futures. Texas Tech still out there at even money. I just think they're better than everyone in that conference. The schedule's an absolute abomination. They don't play they don't play Utah. They don't play BYU. They don't play Kansas State. So give me that to win the Big 12 at even money, and Georgia to win the SEC at plus 320. All right, that's going to do it for the podcast. Just a reminder, continue to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Every episode is also up on YouTube, youtube.com/college football betting podcast. For the producers of this podcast, Wyatt Tomchek and Ryan Hunter, for Matt Youmans, I'm Tim Murray. We will be back early next week with another episode of the VSiN College Football Betting Podcast.